Hello, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Kurt Holden with the University Police Department here at Wright State. I've been with the police department for about 12 or 13 years, and our department partnered with the Division of Student Affairs, Student Advocacy and Wellness to create a program about power-based violence and online dating safety. And I'll let my partner, Corey Pleska, go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, Corey Pluska. I am a licensed social worker and I am the survivor advocate and case manager here at Wright State. I am housed in the Office of Student Advocacy and Wellness, and I specialize in serving survivors of power-based violence, which can include domestic violence, stalking, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and anything that might fall under that umbrella. I offer a variety of services to survivors, offer case management in the way of meeting with folks periodically to go over different skills that might help them in negotiating and discussing what has happened to them and coping with it. I offer court accompaniment. I provide services for those going through the Title IX process. And I offer a lot of referrals for local resources that help with power-based violence. So if you are ever in need of those services, or you have a friend that has been harmed by power-based violence or a family member, you're also able to come and discuss what has happened and see what options are best for you. So we are going to discuss some great strategies and boundaries that you can put into place today to help protect you during online dating. You can use all of these strategies or none of these strategies, but what we really want you to take home is it's never going to be anyone's fault if they are harmed on any kind of date that has started online or any kind of date in general. We just want you to know that there are some boundaries and some tricks of the trade that you can utilize in order to build that safety net around yourself a little bit, because we have seen a change and a shift in the way that perpetrators are acting during the time of COVID, since we're all online. So,
And in the live sessions, we established some ground rules, and that was just to be respectful within the comments. So if you see our overview, that's what the ground rules were based on. Corey's going to touch on power-based violence and what exactly that is, and the umbrella of what falls under power-based violence. She's going to discuss intersectionality and the importance of consent. And then we're going to transition over to me, to where I'll discuss some of the online dating and the privacy and harassment, and then also discuss some of the strategies. And at the very end, because it's not a live session, we are going to have our contact information there. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all about any of the information that, of course, we touch base on today.
okay, so what is power-based violence? Often this is a term that isn't very familiar to folks. So the definition we utilize here on campus is the use of actual and or perceived power over another in order to gain and maintain control within a relationship. Again, that touches on that umbrella of terminology: domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, sexual harassment, stalking. And then another question that we often get when we introduce this terminology is, why do we use it? And the short and simple answer is to create inclusive and intersectional awareness around these forms of violence. It's very important that we use terminology that recognizes the actual influence in this crime, or in these types of crimes and in these types of actions, because it's really based on a need and a want for power. And when we dissect that and we look at other terminology that can often be used, such as intimate partner violence, a lot of the times people believe, oh, well, I have to be in a romantic relationship for this to happen. And that's not true. It can happen in your family. It can happen within friend groups. It can happen with professors, coaches, advisors. And then, we hear other terminology such as gender-based violence, and that tends to lend us to thinking more in a binary. And when we're seeing, kind of mentally picturing what we've been socialized to see, which is a man harming a woman, a cisgendered man harming a cisgendered woman. And that takes away from awareness that can be built around folks that don't identify in the binary, and also folks that aren't in heterosexual relationships. So we really wanted to broaden that terminology so that people feel as though the help is there for them because it is, and also recognize that this type of harm can come to them as well, just as easily, if not more easily, than the folks that we are more prone to think of. So it was really important for me to introduce the concept of intersectionality. It can be quite a difficult concept to digest, so I always encourage people to move forward and do a little bit more reading or check out, Kimberly Crenshaw's TED Talk, where she very eloquently discusses the need and the importance for this terminology. So the definition that we utilize here on campus of intersectionality, which is a concept that was introduced by attorney and legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, what is a way of understanding how different identities overlap and create opportunity for multiple forms of oppression to work against an individual. So the reason I pull this in with power-based violence is because when we're talking about power and we're talking about privilege, both of which are not earned, they're given. People can utilize that against others who hold more marginalized identities and are more apt to not have as much agency within systems and not to have as much access to resources as well. And we have a short video clip that we're going to show you of Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw defining her terminology.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves, and they create obstacles that often are not understood within conventional ways of thinking about anti-racism or feminism or whatever social justice advocacy structures we have. Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be offended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem. So I encourage people to think about how the convergence of race stereotypes or gender stereotypes might actually play out in the classroom, between students and other students, between students and administrators, and commit themselves to understanding that as a way of intervening and providing equal educational opportunity for all students, regardless of their identity. Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit. It is a relationship between people in history, people in communities, people in institutions. So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in school for all to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
So hopefully that helps a little bit in clearing away some of the fog around this terminology if it's something new that has been introduced to you. When I present in person, I usually draw a Venn diagram where we can see the intersections of identities and the opportunities for forms of oppression to arise. Excuse me. So this is the closest I could get to that kind of picture. But some examples that I wanted to give, we'll talk a little bit about resource availability, okay? So when we talk about resources for survivors of power-based violence, let's talk about domestic violence for a moment and going to a shelter. Oftentimes, we don't realize that the movement that started these shelters was spearheaded by white cisgendered women. And unfortunately, they disregarded the advice of the women of color that they were consulting with in starting this movement and starting these shelters. So these shelters are really based around more of a law enforcement, more of a legal kind of framework. And in doing that, they significantly isolated individuals that don't necessarily feel comfortable working within these systems based on an array of reasons. So if we look at the intersection of race and or race and gender identity, when we're talking about access to a shelter, it can often be really difficult for people that identify maybe not in the gender binary, maybe as non-binary or as trans, to feel comfortable or even gain access to shelter because they're geared so much towards cisgendered women. And we have a real lack of education and knowledge, unfortunately, in a lot of these shelters that allows for trans folks and non-binary folks to be welcomed with open arms, as they should be. And if you compound that with race, so if you have an individual who is Black and also trans, then you're looking at, you know, a history that has not been kind to people of color within domestic violence shelters, compounded with a gender identity that isn't served well or served at all in some shelters. And so now you're seeing where that combination of identities and those experiences will keep people away from even asking for shelter. And when they do ask for shelter, a lot of the times it's not given or it's not readily available in the same way that it is for cisgender white women. So that's just a really quick example of how intersectionality can play into a domestic violence situation. There are many, many, many examples using all of these identities and more that we can get into. But I just wanted to give a quick example to hopefully illustrate what Kimberly Crenshaw is talking about with this terminology. And another thing that is really important for us to discuss is consent. We consent to things every day, all day. Everybody does, from children to adults, and things that, something that always kind of confuses me in a way, but also makes sense for various social reasons, is consent when we talk about sex can be very, very difficult for people to understand. When really consent is something that is a huge part of our everyday lives. So Planned Parenthood did a great job of creating this acronym of FRIES, where we can hopefully remember some of the key aspects of consent when it comes to sexual contact or just in general. So it's freely given, meaning there is no coercion. Unfortunately, there's a lot of coercion that goes along with sexual assault that we don't really discuss very often because, again, we're kind of socialized to think about the legal system. And coercive sexual assault doesn't necessarily always bring about the same amount of attention from the legal world as more violent forms of sexual assault. So freely given is really, really important. It's reversible. I can consent to something and then I can decide I don't want to engage in this act anymore, and that should be respected, and the act should stop. It's informed. You are able to have a conversation about protection. You are able to have a conversation about STI testing if those are things that you feel are necessary. And that individual will respect, or those individuals will respect what you need in that situation. So if if protection is something that is of big importance, then those things will be utilized. Dental dams, condoms, all of those things will be utilized. And both partners will be, or all partners will be able to have that discussion, and will also be respecting one another's boundaries in that. It's enthusiastic. Everyone participating is enthusiastically there. It's not something that, we're doing in order to make coercive behavior stop, or to, a lot of the times I've worked with people that will say, well, if I just, would have sex with them, then, maybe the abuse wouldn't happen in a physical way. And it's specific. You can give consent for one act, and that doesn't mean that you're consenting to all acts. So I can consent to kissing you, but that does not mean that I'm giving consent for oral sex. So these are all really great. This is a really great way to remember the key aspects of consent And if you ever have any question, you can run through this and just think, does this hit all the marks, or is there something missing? And either you need to have a conversation with your partner or partners, or maybe try to disengage in that activity.
So now we're going to transition from some of the terminology and the conversation about consent, and now we're going to move into online dating app safety and just some of the strategies. So when we were developing this program, a simple Google search, if you went onto your Apple store, you're going to see hundreds of dating applications. And each dating application has its similarities, but it also has its differences. What many people don't know is that over 40 million people were using dating apps pre-COVID. The research hasn't been done yet because we're still during COVID-19 times. But I can guarantee you that those numbers have skyrocketed. And just simply everything has gone online. College life has gone online. If you have school-aged children, most of their school is online. We order our food through DoorDash and Grubhub and many other applications and processes to make sure that we can still try to have some form of normalcy in our lives. So as we move through, we're going to discuss just the basics of just privacy and harassment starting off. So again, 40 million people have been using these apps pre-COVID. The numbers have went up. Now, as you download these applications, if you're like me, you see that long licensure user agreement, and it's just very, very long, and we scroll, I accept. And that's for any app, pretty much, that you download on your phone, your iPad, your computer. And we should probably read that because what we think is private may not technically be private. Many of these dating applications and dating sites actually rely on us to just go through it with that not quite understanding that they are gathering and selling our information. They are marketing our information because the more we put into that application, the more that dating app actually learns about us. And a couple years ago, Target, for example, came out with, they were hacked. And everybody that used a credit card during that holiday season, their credit card could be subject to being stolen or put out into the public. And that was a very scary time for everybody. And some of these dating applications actually require credit card information depending on what features you want. And so just be very cognizant about what that licensure agreement is, what the privacy settings are, because the last thing that I would ever want to see is somebody's personal or financial information ever coming about to where they may be victimized, and of course that type of setting. When it comes to harassment online bullying is something that a lot of people didn't want to have that conversation on, but now it's happening more and more because everything's online. We are having more Skype sessions with family, Zoom meetings, WebEx meetings, kids in school. They're playing their video games online. Harassment it's there. And of course, it's something that we definitely want to talk about. Particularly young adults and particularly young women experience online harassment at a very high rate. And also people who identify in other marginalized groups are more likely to experience harassment. This harassment is to be taken seriously. As a police officer, a lot of people feel uncomfortable to come forward because they think, well, it's online. I don't think the police will take this seriously. I'm here to tell you that we will take that seriously. We will definitely look into that matter. And then if for some reason we are unable to do something legally for you, that's where Corey Pluska and her team can actually come in because they provide a lot of resources that can help navigate you through this online world to kind of help you with resources to maybe avoid some of that harassment and try to make you whole. And of course, that setting that brought such a traumatic experience. When it comes to online dating or actually any relationship, it's very important to identify, establish, and maintain boundaries. in your online relationships, and that goes for any relationship. Sadly, we cannot depend on others to respect those boundaries unless we inform them and identify those and then establish them. And we must continue to enforce and maintain those boundaries, and it's very important because there are sometimes maybe someone doesn't know that that was a boundary. And so then you identify it, you inform them, you establish it, you reinforce that boundary, and then they continue to try to cross that boundary with you. This could be a potential red flag to go ahead and end that relationship as of course you've already told them what they're doing is uncomfortable, what they're doing is disrespectful. And so that's why it's very important to identify those boundaries, establish them, maintain them, and also discuss that with whatever type of relationship it is, whether it is a relationship with family or a relationship with friends or an online dating relationship. When I was developing this program with, of course, Corey, we can find 100 tips, the top 100 tips and strategies to help navigate with online dating, to establish boundaries, to maybe look at potential red flag behaviors. But when you really look at them, you can consolidate them. And so we were able to come up with 9 strategies. And the first one we're going to talk about is why it's recommended to utilize a different photograph for your dating profile. Many people may have seen this show. I know I've watched this show. I've watched it, a lot, especially when it's on TV. COVID has increased my TV watching time, sadly. But there's a show called MTV Catfish, and they actually show this process that if you utilize a profile picture from your Facebook or from your Twitter or from your Instagram, and that is on that dating application, somebody can actually take that, copy it, and paste it into a search engine, and it will possibly pop up your social media platforms that maybe you weren't comfortable in sharing it. And once they get to those Facebooks and Instagrams and Twitters, they can begin learning all kinds of things about you. If, of course, your Facebook is public or it's just got very limited privacy settings, they can see what your favorite food is. They might see who your best friends are. They can see where you go on vacation, what you like to do, if you have pets, and those may not be things that you want to quite share just yet. And that could give somebody, sadly, like a perpetrator who is looking to try to victimize somebody, an opportunity to learn things about you that they normally wouldn't learn about you. And so it's recommended to utilize a picture that you haven't used on any other platform. And of course, that goes for LinkedIn. Just be cognizant, because when they go to LinkedIn, a lot of people share where they work, they share their resumes, that can come up with their home addresses, their phone numbers. It can come up with a lot of information that maybe we haven't thought about. But again, if, of course, you want to just use whatever picture you want, that is completely okay. This is just a strategy that may eliminate any type of information that you're just not comfortable to share at this moment. Number 2 is to avoid connecting with suspicious profiles. In the live sessions, some people said, well, that's kind of common sense in a way. And the thing is that what's suspicious to you may not be suspicious to somebody else. And so if you see something that is suspicious to you, block it, report it, avoid it. A lot of people utilize fake profile pictures, and a lot of these dating applications and dating sites do not confirm whether the information is accurate or truthful. And so with that, they don't do background checks on, of course, these sites. So is the person who they say they are? And if, of course, the profile picture appears to be fake, looks fake, acts fake, seems fake, that I would definitely recommend that you would avoid, block, report that. And, of course, just avoid that altogether. Number 3 is to check your potential date on social media. There's nothing wrong with wanting to know more about the person that you're considering dating or engaging in some type of friendship or relationship with. I know back in number one, I said people can do this to you, but it's okay if, of course, you want to try to see if something comes out, because many people utilize some form of social media platform now. And of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to know more about the person. And it's also recommended to try and find out more. If, of course, the individual has no social media platforms, the name, you can't, like you just can't find it anywhere, then it's okay to ask questions to them. Hey, can I learn more about you? Because at the end of the day, you're in control on what, of course, you want to allow to progress in that relationship. And so there's nothing wrong with wanting to know more. So if you ask those questions and someone doesn't want to answer those questions for you and that doesn't make you comfortable, then, of course, be comfortable before you move forward in that relationship. Wait to share personal information. Immediately establish boundaries from, of course, the first second that, of course, you engage in any type of relationship. A lot of these applications, such as Tinder, the beginning of a relationship starts with a swipe. Back in my day, we walked up and talked to somebody. Now you can swipe and say, I'd like to talk to this person, or you can swipe another direction and it says, don't want to talk to that person. And a simple swipe can immediately engage a conversation. And so when that conversation begins, if somebody is asking questions that make you uncomfortable, don't feel required to share any information about yourself at all. At the end of the day, you being comfortable, you being in control, you identifying what are your boundaries, what makes you feel comfortable, that is what's most important here. And so I just want to just encourage you to continue to establish those boundaries throughout the relationship from the beginning. Video chat before you meet in person. A lot of the dating applications are starting to add security features because of COVID, because of the increase of people seeking online socialization. Because I'm more of an introvert, but I have friends who are very extroverted, and COVID-19, they need to talk to somebody. They need to chit-chat. They need to meet people. They need to meet new people. I just need Netflix. I just need Netflix, and I'll be completely happy. But when you go to meet somebody and you're like, okay, I've seen their picture. I kind of know a little bit about them, but I just want to kind of make sure it is who it is. I've never utilized this online dating application before. I've never really done this before, but this is where we're going now. Try to confirm that the person appears to be who they claim. This is a strategy to create an environment where you are in control by establishing boundaries. And this is a good point to where maybe some red flags might come about. If, of course, somebody says, I don't feel comfortable video chatting, or my video chat system's broke, or they do video chat but the screen's blocked, or it's in a super dark room and you can't really tell who they are, that might be a red flag. Now, everything they're saying could be true, but it could be a red flag to go, okay, I see their picture, we've talked about all kinds of things. Why won't they let me see who they are before we go see each other in an hour? And so it's just something to really maybe consider, maybe recommend putting, just put this tool in, of course, your toolbox that maybe you haven't thought of, especially those who are new to the online dating application scene. Tell a friend where you are going. This is a strategy to assist in creating that safe space on a date. And it's also recommended to tell a friend, especially if this is, you don't really know much about them. You just met them online. You really don't know much. And this is actually more common than a lot of people think. I'm sure we've all seen the movies to where the friend will come and save their friend from a really bad date. This is kind of like that. It's just letting them know, like, hey, this is where I'm going. If, of course, I don't text you in like 20 minutes, then things are going great. But if of course, I do text you, please save me. Like, get me out of this bad date. Like, I need, let's go grab a cup of coffee together. Like, I don't know who this person is, but I just want to just see if, of course, this is something that I want to maybe consider down the road. So just look at this as a potential strategy moving forward. Meet in a public place. This is also recommended until you are comfortable. And meeting for a cup of coffee, meeting for lunch, meeting for like a dinner, meeting in a public place, and then having those conversations, identifying those boundaries, seeing if, of course, they respect those boundaries before moving into more of a private setting. This is important. So if, of course, you want to meet in a public place and they insist, no, I just want you to come to my house, or no, I just want to, and if you don't feel comfortable, don't feel required to move forward with that. Immediately reinforce your boundaries. If someone says, this makes me uncomfortable, and disengage. Call a friend. Do not rely on a date for transportation.
Can I just real fast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. So going back to the last one, meeting in a public place, that looks a lot different now with COVID. When it was warmer, people I know were meeting in parks, being able to social distance, hang out, picnic table, grab a milkshake or a coffee. But now that it's getting colder, that's going to look a lot different. And we just want everyone to realize that we are aware of that, and that COVID, it's kind of, in the winter, it's kind of a perpetrator's best friend, because it is very isolating and everyone is so precautious that it may even lend to people not wanting to tell their loved ones that they're going on a date, because they don't want to upset people because, they're meeting a new person or inviting a new person into their COVID bubble. So I think it's just really important for all of you to know that I would encourage everybody to try to err on the side of, let's make sure that everybody's safe and I'm being able to be supportive to somebody that maybe needs that social interaction or really needs to just get out and just think of the safety of that individual, not just from a COVID standpoint, and really being able to support others. If they are still continuing to date, talk to them about safety measures if you have questions. That was my dog sneezing. I apologize. And really just be able to be supportive of that, because COVID has just created so many opportunities for harm, and perpetrators have recognized that. Unfortunately, the trends are shifting, and they will continue to shift, I believe. And also just, it's not a bad thing for needing human connection. There's nothing wrong with that. It's very natural. That's what we're built for as humans. So just realizing that before passing judgment about anything COVID related is just, I think, really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because right now, perpetrators with, of course, COVID-19, a lot of what's being said is limit who you have around on the holidays, limit how many people you have in your house, limit the amount of people. So sometimes a perpetrator might actually try to take advantage of course, these protocols and say, that's why I don't feel comfortable meeting public. That's why I prefer to meet private. And so if, of course, meeting private is completely uncomfortable to you, stick to your boundaries and meet in a public place. And family and friends and all of us, we need to support that as well. And so just when it comes to transportation as well, I know some people, they don't have transportation per se, but a friend, family, a trusted go-to person. This is a way to establish boundaries and to create a safe environment to where you're not only in control, you're most comfortable. And that way, if, of course, you are to drive somewhere, you know where you're driving. You know that, of course, you have a form of transportation to leave the area if, of course, you feel uncomfortable. And then, of course, you utilize this, of course, telling a friend or family, or say that family friend is your transportation. This is recommended so that someone that you just met through maybe a swipe, that you just agreed to say, hey, let's meet here, and, oh, I've never been to that place. Where is that at? And you start thinking about those things. This is a strategy to, of course, help of course, help you maybe see some red flags that maybe, of course, somebody says, no, don't drive yourself. I'll come get you. And of course you're like, no, I'm perfectly fine driving. I can completely drive there myself. It's right down the street. This is a red flag to where you can go, okay, why are they so insistent upon picking me up? Why are they so insistent about being that form of transportation for me? So this is a recommended strategy. Final is yourself. Trust yourself. At the end of the day, what somebody does for themselves to make themselves comfortable and safe may be different from somebody else. But at the end of the day, whether you utilize any of these strategies, because some people say, I don't utilize any of that and I'm perfectly fine. And that is completely okay. These are just things to maybe that you weren't maybe aware of. And then at the end of the day, even if, of course, you don't utilize anything, nothing says it's okay to ever victimize somebody. And I want you to understand that regardless of what we have discussed here today, if where somebody tries to harm you, tries to threaten you, tries to harass you in any form or fashion, that is not okay at all. And of course, I'm here to support you, to encourage you that whatever boundaries you have, whatever boundaries you identify, establish. I will support those boundaries. I will encourage those boundaries. But that may not stop me from also maybe throwing out a couple ideas here and there that, of course, that you may have not thought of. And I'm sure Corey is, of course, also going to maybe talk about how it's very important to just trust yourself and of course, you go through that route.
Yeah, I mean, human beings are still animals, and we have those built-in biological reactions for a reason. I believe we're the only animals on the planet that are taught to ignore them. So it's really important, if you get that feeling, go with it. Go with it. Even if it doesn't pan out to be true, it's better to be safer. And, your body's reacting in that way for a reason. I gave a book recommendation out the last time we did a live session. It's called The Gift of Fear. And it's a really great book talking about just that, how we have been conditioned to ignore those biological reactions, but also how they can save our lives or get us out of situations without us even knowing it. So I think it's just really important to trust yourself. You know yourself better than anyone ever will. You are the expert in your own life. You know what boundaries you need in place to feel comfortable. You know all of that. We can't tell you that. We gave you some kind of tips and tricks of the trade to help enforce boundaries or create boundaries and how to identify some red flags. But at the end of the day, it's what makes you feel most comfortable in navigating these relationships and navigating online communication. So the biggest thing that we hope you take away today is we are definitely here to help no matter what. And please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And we are also completely open to providing this in another open forum setting if anyone would like for us to. So,
absolutely. And so, of course, you've missed the live session. This is a recorded session, and also this presentation is also going to be available with this recorded session. And then if you have any questions at all, if, of course, you want to reach out to myself, reach out to Corey, reach out to both of us, this is our contact information. Kurt.Holden@Wright.edu for myself and Corey.Pleska@Wright.edu. And we'll be more than happy to, of course, guide you, help you any way that you need us. We're there for you.
So thank you so much for listening, and we hope to hear from you with any questions.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us. Bye.